This is Father Sebastiaan, Master Fangsmith of the Sabretooth Clan and impresario of the Endless Night Vampire Ball. And you're listening to Hollywood Arcane, Vampire Culture, Music, and Magic, with your special guest host, JoHanna Moresco of the Cruise Shadows. Good morning, JoHanna. This is the earliest show we've ever done.
It is. Can you believe that I'm not exploding into flames?
Well, you know, it is sunny Florida.
That's true. Well, good morning, Sebastiaan. It's even earlier for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is earlier for me, and I'm on my way to Sacramento to the True Blood party for Shannon McCabe's pre-party for a vampire ball.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm getting on a plane right after this, and I'm heading up to Sac, and I'm meeting some friends, and we're gonna do some energy work and have lunch, and then it's time for True Blood. So I'm not getting a costume, but she's gonna be Sookie tonight as a vampire.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah,
man. I wouldn't be surprised if you get there and she has a costume waiting for you.
yeah. Well, I'm making fangs, so I'm gonna be wearing my fang making costume.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So this is. Do you get up this early at Dragon Con?
Not if I can help it. Sometimes I stay up this late.
Okay. I haven't been to Dragon Con since 1999, so I don't have anything to compare it to.
Your lack of Dragon Con years is almost old enough to rent a car.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, you should probably come
24
back.
years. Yeah, I'm gonna give up Burning Man and I'll be there next year, I promise.
All right.
Rock and roll. So today we have a special guest.
We do. Our guest today is the gatekeeper of Endless Night, Victor Magnus.
Hello, Victor.
Greetings.
Hey, Victor.
Greetings.
How's New York doing?
Well, I don't know. I haven't been outside yet. It's too early.
It's too early. Yeah, we're all up early, and
Early for us.
Yeah.
yeah. But it was the only time.
Sebastian's the only morning vampire I know.
Who?
You get up on purpose at this hour all the time.
I do. I wake up.
Actually, yes. You get up annoyingly early. It's tough to share a hotel room with him.
Yeah.
Well, the day starts good for the early bird. Early bird gets the worm. See, I'm not really.
That's if you really want worms. I don't want worms.
I'm not really awake at this time. I just pretend to be. So, but you can blame Patty Negri for her influence on me getting up at 7:30 or 7 in the morning, because she's a morning person, and I'm half a morning person. But we're awake. And I can't drink coffee for the first hour and a half, so I'm fucked.
Oh man.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to drink coffee for the first hour and a half. You're awake.
What's the point of getting up then?
Well, you wake up and then you wait an hour and a half, and your body can receive it. That's what my nutritionist said.
Sadistic.
Well, them's is the way the body works.
Konstantinos told me the same thing.
Yeah, and you get more energy out of your day.
Yeah.
That's called a hack.
That's what he said. He gave me all kinds of science advice for my insomnia. I'm probably too stubborn to try it, but it was really interesting.
I thought you were just a goth.
Same thing.
Insomniac and goth go together, one on one.
A little bit. But yeah, we got Victor up and early, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Victor's like, fuck y'all.
Forgive us.
Forgive us. But we did it.
Yeah, you did.
I think you owe Victor something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually up this early at Endless Night because I have to be.
Right.
On Friday and Saturday, but otherwise, yeah. If it's if it's the sunrise, that means I should be just getting home
Well, that's speaking of
or going to bed.
things. What's our black veil today, JoHanna?
Our black veil in honor of Victor is Gotham Halo. And I shall read it now. Gotham Halo, New York City, established 1995. The Gotham Halo is the first and original Halo established in 1995. It encompasses the New York metropolitan area, including the 5 boroughs of New York City, Westchester, and Long Island. Many called Gotham the Rome of vampires, and it was home to the largest collection of lifestyle vampires, clans, households, and courts than any other place on Earth. The Gotham Halo has a long vampire history because this is the traditional seat of the Sabretooth clan, which was founded there by Father Sebastiaan on August 7th, 1995. The first Endless Night Vampire Ball, which took place in February of 1996 at the Bank nightclub, officially launched the era of Gotham, Sabretooth clan, and vampire culture. In the 1990s, nightclubs like Limelight, a deconsecrated church at 666th Avenue from 1983 to 2000, Mother at 432 Washington Street, home of Long Black Veil, Jackie 60, and Click and Drag 1996 to 2000, and The Bank, 225 East Houston Street, 1990 to 1999, were the center of the vampire community and were officially recognized havens by the Sabretooth clan. In March of 1997, Empress Chi-Chi Valenti and Father Sebastiaan opened Long Black Veil and the Vampire Lounge at Mother. Long Black Veil is where the vampire subculture on the east coast of the USA and the first Black Veils and Legacy Ankh originated. This was also about the time where author Catherine Ramsland, Anne Rice biographer, wrote the book Piercing the Darkness in 1998 about the 1996 disappearance of investigative journalist Susan Walsh, bringing national attention to the New York vampire culture. Gotham Halo was further solidified by a monthly meeting called the Court of Gotham, starting in 1997. The Gotham Halo takes its name not from the city of the comic book Batman legend, but from the fanciful tales of author Washington Irving and his depiction of Dutch colonial era of New York when it was known as New Amsterdam. These fantastic stories included The Headless Horseman, Sleepy Hollows in Gotham Halo, and Rip Van Winkle.
Wow, I haven't read that in years.
Yeah.
Like, wow. So, Victor, what was the vampire scene like before Gotham Halo was established?
Well, I mean, what it was really just a loose association. A lot of people, if you wanted to meet someone else who is into the vampires, there's no scene that we're talking about, but into vampires are people who wanted to be vampires, people identifying as vampires, people just wanting to meet vampires. Usually went to the Dark Shadows conventions. Dark Shadows was the Gothic soap opera of the late 1960s. It ended about 1970, 71, but the fandom kept on, just like Star Trek. And the Dark Shadows conventions really took off, and that was really the place to go and meet other people that were interested. Dovetailing with that was the whole new age sort of um, pseudosciences and interest in the paranormal that took off in the late 60s and early 70s as well. So that brought a lot of people out and about who identified as vampires. And before that was also there was a Count Dracula Society, which was another loose association of pen pals, so people who identified as vampires could contact each other. So it was like
Wow.
a very much a loose association.
Oh, wow. That's and were there the identities that we have today, like Sang Sai lifestyle?
Yeah, well, no, not so much. Everyone assumed that everybody was sanguine back then because that was what they were informed by what they were reading. The sort of psychic vampirism started coming in the late 1960s, but it really took off in the 80s.
Okay.
How did you discover the vampire scene and how did you get involved with it?
Okay, so the first person to ever call me a vampire was my mother because I refused to go to sleep when I was a little kid. I didn't want to go to bed. And she'd say, "What are you, some sort of vampire?" But really, I was just enthralled with the Universal monsters when I was a kid. And the king of the Universal monsters really was Dracula. So that had a huge impact on me as a child. And then, of course, there were all the other Dracula movies and the Hammer films. So I was very much a fan of Gothic horror, I mean, including Frankenstein and everything else. But it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was part of my nature. I didn't come into my nature until really about my late teens when I realized that maybe it's not that I'm interested in vampires because of that influence, or maybe I'm drawn to those monsters in Dracula because there's something about me that's vampiric, something about me that was already manipulating energy in others. So that was sort of my awakening. So I would say that I'll give away my age. It's not in the hundreds, so I disappoint everybody. But that happened sort of in the early 80s. So there was a lot of stuff that was going on, and there was a very sort of nascent, I wouldn't call it vampire scene or community, but there were people that were now doing things. Mostly there were artistic endeavors, but people were coming out more and more.
Interesting. So, what was the when did the vampires start coming out of the coffin and go public?
Well, I think that, and then once again, this is how media informs people and influences what people do and how they come out with things that were hidden before. And there was a huge coming out of the coffin, so to speak, after Vampire the Masquerade came out,
Mm.
where you sort of they took a page from what was in the game and say, wow, I can now hide in plain sight by saying, oh, you know what, this is a game, but they're really just giving in and showing what their true nature was. But people could say, oh, you're just role playing. So, yeah, sure, I'm just role playing.
That's what I did when I was doing rituals at Limelight. Peter Gation would come up to me and go, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm playing Vampire the Masquerade." When I'm doing a diabolical summoning of a demon or something.
Yeah,
Or-
well, that's the hiding in plain sight.
So the masquerade was a masquerade.
The masquerade led to the real masquerade.
Okay. And
How and when did you two meet?
oh no.
All right, so in 1995, I was running the magic section inside of the biggest costume store in New York City at the time called Abracadabra, which was in the West Village. And Sebastian was looking for a place to make fangs. So he went in and talked to the owner, and as soon as he said vampires, the owner said, "Go see Victor in the back. Go see Victor in the back." So Sebastian came up to me and he was like, "Oh, I can make fangs while you wait." And that wasn't so much of a thing back then. Nobody really made fangs while you waited. So I was like, "Oh, that's a little hard to believe." And Sebastian said, "You know what? I'll come back tomorrow and I'll show you. I'll make you a pair of fangs." I said, "Okay." Now I didn't know what to think because when he came in, he had this big woolly coat for some reason, even though it was what, September? He had these new rocks on that were like the heels were like this tall. So he's already tall. So you can imagine he's like a giant. He's like a big furry giant, almost like a Wookiee. So he said, "All right, come back tomorrow." Sure enough, he came back the next day. He made a pair of fangs while I waited, and I was like, "Great, let's do this." Unfortunately, another fangsmith had come in before, who didn't do them the same day, but the owner felt obligated to go with him. So while we didn't end up working the same place, then that's when our friendship really started, and that's when he invited me to go to the vampire events, and I started going to the very early ones.
What were those early events like?
Well, like the very first one, they were a little bit small, but then the bank got bigger, and then the Limelight event. Remember the Limelight event
Yep,
in
I'm writing about
'96,
it in the memoirs.
which was huge. And the great thing about that was that you had all of these people. Well, some of them were gothic, but mostly people that were really interested in vampires inside of this major nightclub in New York City, associating with all of these regular people. It was amazing. But the balls before that was really the building and the strengthening of the community, where, like at the bank, like almost everyone there had something to do with vampires. And nobody had really had that before, unless it was meeting for gaming or the Dark Shadows conventions. But this was different because this wasn't a convention. This was a nightclub, and this was living the life now, living the nightlife.
Yeah, Limelight was a very special place, and um, you know, Johanna, I have a funny story about Victor.
Oh yeah.
Since I just got
Did he wear a furry coat in September?
no, but one night I was at Limelight, and it was we were there during the Avalon years, and Victor, I was like, Victor was on a programming frenzy, getting work done, and I said, "I'll see you tomorrow," and I left, and he got locked in the building. So Victor was the only
No.
guy in the building because the reception left, and he was there late.
Yeah, we had
And
we had an office that was in what was used to be the rectory there, which is kind of separate from the club. So they shut down, and no one checked. So I was there working, and then you can't get out once it
Yeah.
was closed. So that was it. I was stuck. I had to call the manager to come and open for me. But if you want to be somewhere spooky, it was the Limelight back then, when with everything shut off,
now it's
and
a fucking shopping mall.
a million sounds. Like I can say all these weird sounds going on all the time.
How long were
Yeah,
you stuck there? Were you all night?
No, no, just a couple of hours.
Okay.
So I just
yeah.
went back to work.
Victor called me up and he's like, "Is there reception still here?" And I'm like, "Victor, it's 3 in the morning. It was like a Tuesday night because we were closed on Tuesdays." But I felt like kind of like, oh shit. So I called the manager, and Victor called the manager, and it was like we managed to rescue him.
Oh,
Luckily, he was still up.
Yeah,
yeah.
well, thank God for nightlife.
Yeah. Uh, all right. So the vampire culture, as we know it now, in its more sort of organized way, has been around a good while. Can you kind of talk about how different decades of it are different? How are the 90s different from the early aughts, from the 2010s, from now? Are there anything that kind of stand out for different decades?
I think that definitely when I called it a loose association in the '80s, that's because it was more or less still pre-internet. So in the early '90s, there was huge interest in vampires, and Rice was very popular. Late '80s, early '90s. There was the Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula that had just come out. There was all this talk about Interview with the Vampire with Tom Cruise that was coming out. So there was a lot of interest going on, dovetailing with now the explosion of the internet. I was telling everybody the big difference in culture, popular culture, was in 1995. America Online, which is the biggest internet provider at the time, had 3 million subscribers. In 1997, they had over 20 million subscribers. So you see how quickly that explosion occurred. Sebastiaan comes in '95, and he was one of the early adopters of using the internet to promote. So the community started really coming together and exploding online because of the internet. Not online that this is the only place we're going to be. Online is this is where we're going to figure out how we're going to go meet each other. So very early on, Sebastian was promoting using the internet, using email um, chains and using groups like Yahoo groups and stuff. So that was the biggest difference, and that really was the real sort of birth of the modern vampire scene or community.
You know, when AOL went flat rate in August of 1996, 97, I think, it was an explosion because people were used to paying 3.45 or 3.99 an hour to get online. So you'd have to do a dial up and download all your stuff. And I remember I was the first club promoter that I know of to use an email list. And my first email was vampire@io.com, Illuminati Online from Steve Jackson Games.
Steve Jackson.
Yeah. And there was things like alt.vampires and um, the Yahoo groups, which were called e groups at the time. And it was really interesting because right around then is when Long Black Veil opened at Mother. So Victor wrote the history of Long Black Veil in the Black Veils book.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
it's all in there. But that was the thing, getting everybody together from the vampire balls. Now we were able to go to a weekly event, which was Long Black Veil at Mother. So the balls were still going on, but there was also now a weekly place to meet. And that, again, was a strengthening of the community.
yeah, and the LARP scene, the club scene, and with Sabretooth having all the different houses, and we had the Court of Gotham. The 1990s was the golden era of the vampire world, especially the late 90s, because Blade had just come out. We had Lost Boys out in the 90s and the 80s. Then we had Bram Stoker's Dracula in 92, and then Interview with the Vampire in 94, the Memnock Ball in New Orleans in 95, which really inspired me to get in the Vampire Club promotion. Because the one thing about New York, unlike other places, is you could go out to 4 or 5 in the morning, but there was nowhere to go home alone. You go to a diner. Okay, like in places like LA, you go out to a club and you're closed at 2 o'clock, and you then go over to your local diner to hang out. While in LA, you go out to your. I'm still not awake, guys. Um, that's the theme for this. Everyone's sleeping. I go out to LA, and everybody would go to their house up in the Hollywood Hills and hang out. While in New York, everybody would be going to a club, then go out to the diner because there was apartments were so small, or if big houses and apartments were far away, or you'd end up going to a penthouse in someone's house, and it would be like a Black Swan sponsor.
Well, that was the great thing about leaving Mother after Long Black Veil because it was in what was then the meatpacking district where they would truck in all of these carcasses and then it will be carved up or whatever and sent out to supermarkets. So when we left the club, it was 4 a.m. and that's just when
Victor,
all the carcasses are coming in.
you got
So
to
we'd
say
be
cow and
leaving.
pig carcasses.
Yeah, there were all these cow carcasses up on these hooks. There was blood all over the streets, blood running in the gutters. And I was like, well, this is appropriate.
I think that's where they got the scene from Blade, the opening scene from Blade,
Yeah,
from,
maybe. Because that's what
because
it felt like in real life.
because Mother was in the meatpacking district. So that's now it's called the High Line and it's all bougie. But back then it was a pretty scary neighborhood. And Mother was right in the middle of it. So
Yeah.
at 4 or 5 in the morning, we'd open up the doors and there'd be cow carcasses hanging there. And that was in 96 and 97. And what was happening was the the movie Blade came out in I think 98 or 99.
Yeah,
And
say
I could have
98.
sworn they got the rave scene from us.
Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow, that's something to imagine. That's very different than what I see now at Endless Night.
those those were the 90s.
Yeah, that's definitely very different, very cool in its own way, but that's different than what I've seen with you guys.
Well, I got to start somewhere, right?
That's true. That's true. Um, you're the first face that most people see when they come into Endless Night, Victor. How long has that been the case?
Well, the Sebastian and I started working together directly. We were friends for a long time before that. After 9/11, there weren't many events going on anymore. Just events here and there, and so Mother had closed. So things were kind of quiet. So I said, well, you know what? There's no events. I don't care if anybody comes. I'm gonna start doing my own events. And Sebastian was in Europe at that time, so he wasn't around. So started doing these middling events that were fine, but at least I felt like I was doing something. Then Sebastian came back to New York, and then we um, sort of joined forces to do this event at this really crazy venue that we found in the East Village. So that's been our professional association since then, and I have been working the doors since then.
Yeah.
So
So
about 2005 directly, but we've known each other now for was 95. I'm going to do the math here. 28 years.
yep, it's been a long, fruitful friendship.
Yeah.
And
Your
So
friendship can rent a car.
that's great.
But actually, there were some reunions I worked at Doran before 1995 when Sebastian would come back from Europe just to do a LBV reunion in New York City and then go back. So it's been longer than 95, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I never gave up on Gotham.
The 2005, yeah. No, you always used to come back.
Yeah, because when I was in Europe, I did weekend trips to New York.
Yeah, because the thing that's amazing about the Gotham, what really we call what the tri-state area, which we're talking about the southern part of New York, northern New Jersey, southern Connecticut, Westchester, Long Island. At one time, there were probably about 80 vampiric houses just in this one area alone. And when you go into about a 30-mile radius from the Empire State Building, population of that area is about 25 million people. So you can imagine why there were so many houses and so many opportunities for people who were in the vampire community or wanted to be a part of the scene could actually meet. So that's a big reason why the events were successful in Gotham.
Yeah, and today it's a whole different story. Um, the vampire community is a uh, is not what it used to be, but everything goes in cycles.
Yeah, the internet has a lot to do with that. It's the rise of social media, just like the rise of the internet sort of changed what the community was. The rise of social media has done that as well. So, um, and things will change again.
Victor, with all the possibilities that we have now to connect online, do you think it's important to still meet in person, and why?
Well, I mean, absolutely, because if you're just talking about it online or dressing up for the camera or just writing about it, it's all academic. It's not real. It's only real now when you're out and about. You've got your fangs in, you've gone through this physical transformation, but you're not shut in now. You're out and about with other people that also have undergone this transformation. They've gone this transformation with how they look. Like I said, the wearing the fangs is very important. The dress, and you could let your inner self out other people in the presence of other people. I mean, it's hard to tell or hard to really gauge somebody's reaction online, especially if you're just posting TikToks or Instagrams. You don't get that instant connection, even if you do streams. What are you just reading some few words here? No, when you see somebody's eyes widen, their pupils get wider when they look and see your outfit and they're like so blown away and impressed by it, or your presence. You feel somebody reacting to your presence when you're out and about, and even say an endless line on the streets of New Orleans or New Orleans, and regular people are looking at you saying, "Where are you going? I want to go where you're going." You don't get any of that online. There's something to have that real visceral reaction of being in the presence of somebody that either is going to adore what you are, is going to be shocked by what you are, or is going to want to be what you are. You don't get any of that online.
Yeah, one of the things that was so realistic about the fangs is I tell everybody to wear them for 2 hours after they get them, because people would get their fangs and then go out in the subway and they have to encounter people. It's not like here in Los Angeles where they get their fangs and they hop in their car and they drive on their merry way. Um, the the thing about fangs in New York is you got to go on the subway, you got to go to the deli, you got to go to the Virgin Megastore, you got to go to Union Square or Astor Place or on 8th Street. Everything was in person, especially before the rise of the internet.
And the thing about riding the subway with your fangs in, people would always say the same thing. This is from more than one person, that they were afraid they were going to scare people, especially little kids. But little kids used to love the fangs. Anybody that was wearing fangs, little kids would bright up, lighten up. They used to love seeing people with fangs on the subway.
And what's also interesting about New York is a lot of the vampire clans formed in Harlem and Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. And it became we created a family tree. So if I made Victor fangs, then he referred a client, because I tried everything to get fangs sold off season. I didn't want to give up making fangs because fangs, as Victor says, I'm at my best when I'm making fangs, and I love fanging people. And what was funny was it it's a shared passion between me and my clients.
Yeah, because it definitely becomes a shared experience and you take that with you. Again, you really don't take these online
Yeah.
reactions with you. They're just in the moment and they're gone or buried or archived.
That's a good point. You're not sharing experiences with these other people. You might be able to communicate with like minded people online, but you're not making memories together.
Correct. Yes. And that's really what will stay with you the rest of your life. You
Yeah,
know,
and
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sebastian.
um, what was the vampire scene was very tunnel and bridge, but it was probably the most diverse group of people I've ever met, and it was very organic. And I remember at Long Black Veil, you'd have like all sorts of people from all different walks of life.
Hmm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's funny now that I've seen people going on about, oh, we need diversity in the vampire scene. We need diversity in the events. We need, and I'm like, what are you talking about? We've always been diverse in every single way that you can imagine, right from the very beginning. Vampires were always accepting, and especially in our community, what we
Yeah.
created in Gotham. I mean, you can name no matter what it was, and you were going to be accepted when you went to Endless Night. Didn't matter what size you were, what creed, what color, what religion you were. It didn't matter at all. You were there to revel in being a vampire or being with vampires or just partying with us. You were accepted. It didn't matter who you were. So especially because Sebastian said the in these urban areas here in New York City, the community really took off. We were always diverse from the very beginning. And as far as we're concerned, that has never changed. Anybody who's actually gone to an endless night can tell you that. An endless night anywhere in the world can tell you how diverse our 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 events are. So sometimes I read those things and say these people have never gone to an event. That's why they're saying that. Because if you do, then you'll see for yourself.
especially in Florida, because Florida has a lot of refugees from New York, and they go down to Florida and they live for 2 or 3 years, and then next thing you know, that they move back to New York, and but then some of them stay, and I can't tell you how many Puerto Rican vampires and black vampires there are. Most of my clients are Puerto Rican, Dominican, or black in New York, and everybody, and they're just like, when I go to France and they're like, wow, there's so many black vampires in New York. I would love to meet one. And I'm like, well, come to New York and hang out.
No, I met them in Paris too, though. I mean, they were there too.
Oh, they're everywhere. Sabretooth Clan is a very diverse, organically diverse place.
Yeah. So if anybody says that, when anybody says that, I just said, you've never been to an event. You just never have been. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of that. And there's a lot of people that proclaim themselves to be all sorts of things and have fancy titles. But again, it's stuff they've given them for themselves. And a lot of them have never been to a real vampire event. So if you get a chance, definitely should come.
I agree.
next time we do this, I'm going to bring a gallon of coffee and I'm going to have it FedEx to each of you.
That'd be great. uh, well, we'll have coffee soon in New Orleans, won't we?
Yes, we'll go out for coffee because
Cafe du
Victor.
Monde.
There's coffee beignet. Well, let's talk about New Orleans and what we're doing
Yeah.
Yeah.
in New Orleans. So Victor will be at the gates the whole weekend. Registration is from noon to 6 every
Now, if
day
you're
in the
Now, if you're coming, I'm going to say, everyone, you should pre-register. If you're there on Friday during the day, stop by and get your credentials while you can, because the night of the event, you can pretty much just go right in and you don't have to do anything else. Registration is open from noon until 6 on Friday and Saturday. You can register on Friday night as well during the salon. You can come in and register night of, but you don't really want to be carrying around uh, your swag, whatever comes with your ticket. So it's better if you just pre-register. You get dressed. You have nothing to worry about. You come to the event and then you just show your badge and you get right in. So if
And
you
then
get a
they can
chance to
shop
stop
at
in,
the
Bazaar.
Vampire Bazaar after they register, right? Because those are the same hours.
Yes, the bazaar is open, so you can shop, register, you can hang out, get something to drink. Also, there in the Voodoo Garden, which is like the perfect location at the House of Blues. So, if you get a chance to stop by, you definitely should see the vendors, register, have a drink, and then explore the quarter before the evening festivities begin.
It's good advice.
so
Dress
we have to
code. What should people know about dress code, Victor?
All right, so everyone, this is this is an event where you really need to bring it. You need to dress up. Now, while we do have the barest minimum, which is all black, and that doesn't mean black t-shirt, doesn't mean black sneakers, no athletic wear, no sports wear. This is a vampire gothic event. No superheroes. I don't care if you're Deadpool, Thor, I don't care what you are. Blade is just about the only one that's allowed to come in, or Mobius. But otherwise, this is still the vampire ball, not so much just a Halloween costume event. So you don't have to dress in theme per se, but you really want to bring it, because when you see how other people come dressed up, you're gonna feel left out, and people do bring it. People put on these elaborate costumes. The costume contest winners are usually the most amazing costumes ever. So you want to come dressed in the themes. It's all on the website. All right, so you can go through the list and say, well, I'm this tier, I'm this tier, I'm this tier. But definitely dress to the nines if you can. Formal wear is always welcome. So if you have a tux, break it out. You're going to feel right at home. But as far as gowns are concerned, your elaborate costumes, bring them all. That's what you're going to want to wear. That's if you want to fit in, that's what you want to wear. Everybody, you still got a few weeks to put your costume together if you haven't yet.
And this year's theme is Temple of the Dark Goddess. And I'm going to be the High Priestess of Lilith on Saturday night. And Victor, what are you going to wear?
I'm still putting it together.
Okay. Well, you're the most important dress code piece of the entire weekend because people see you first.
No pressure, Victor. No pressure.
Oh, he'll live up to the game.
Always. I do feel it's important to point out, in case anyone brand new is watching, there is a night where if you attend, you must wear all black. It's not the main event, it's the Salon Noir. That's Friday, right?
Yes, Friday night.
It's a Friday night.
So if you attend Friday night, you must wear all black for the Salon Noir.
The reason why that is because it's a ritual, and we have Christine Saunders, who's going to be the high priestess of. She's the high priestess of a local Wiccan coven associated with Hex and Christian Day and Brian Kane, and she is going to be our witch priestess because I actually went to Hex Fest this summer. And what was interesting is I walked into the wrong class, and I just picked up the posters for Endless Night, Temple of the Dark Goddess, and I walked in the wrong class, and I was looking for a class on Lilith, and it ended up being her class, and it was on the Dark Goddess. So I took it as a sign that she would be a great person. That she's going to do the invocation and the opening ceremonies on Friday. She's going to do a ritual on Saturday. Friday night she's doing the core ritual at midnight during the salon. Saturday she's doing a blessing of the Dark Goddess on the stage, and Sunday she's going to be doing closing ceremonies. And she's one really cool person.
That sounds very cool. Very unique from what we've had before.
Yes, and guys, we're usually a lot more spunky, but this coffee situation will definitely be remedied for next year's interview with Victor.
But I'm never really spunky, really. This is
I'm
it
trying to-
usually.
So what other questions do we have for Victor?
Whatever's rattling around in our brains, I guess.
Okay, so Victor, what is your best experience at an Endless Night? Like, what when it comes to you and you're talking about Endless Night, what memory really jogs your noggin?
Wow, that is. I think that I think that it was the steampunk soiree. Remember that event? That was
Yeah.
2011, 2012.
That's
Was that?
13 years ago.
Yes, but that was the last time I think Genevieve performed.
Yeah.
So there was just something magical about that weekend. That's sort of Endless Night really started really took on its current sort of personality. I think that that's, even though it had been going on for much longer, there was something about that event that really solidified the way we do things today. And that was, we had a lot of new people that year, but there was just something special about all the motifs and Genevieve performing, and it was just something about that steampunk soiree event that was amazing. I wish we could do another one.
Well, I don't think steampunk is as big as it used to be.
Oh, it definitely is not.
It's more mainstream. There's a really good steampunk bar in Jacksonville.
Mhm.
Bar in Jacksonville that we went to with Cliff and Fred. That was
Mhm.
pretty cool. We had our vampire council there, and we were making fun and eating vegan food. So Victor, off the subject of Endless Night, everybody has their favorite vampire movies. What is yours?
Well, it's like when people ask me what my favorite movie is or favorite song is. I don't have like a single favorite. Um, you know, but there are films I do like. One of them, I would say of course, the original Dracula with Bela Lugosi. Is still my favorite vampire of all time, even though he didn't have fangs. Then there was the Christopher Lee Dracula, which I definitely loved. I enjoyed Interview with the Vampire, even though it was sort of a flawed adaptation. Um, I don't really want to talk about any other adaptations of, of Anne Rice. And yeah, and while I like Bram Stoker's Dracula stylistically, it was not a good adaptation. But I could watch those over and over again. There was a movie called Near Dark. If you've never seen that, that I
Oh yeah, that was
definitely, yeah, I definitely enjoyed that movie as well. So I guess it depends because the great thing about vampire movies is that, like westerns, they can be all different types of set in all different places. So it depends on what I'm in the mood for. But I always find myself going back to that original Dracula film.
that's awesome. So Victor, thank you for coming on Hollywood Arcane. It was really cool having you and letting the audience know that there's a guy behind the candy corn. You know, and anyway, if you want to make Victor happy and you want to, you know, get your badge and everything like that, you must make a donation to his candy corn collection. Um,
Please don't take it out of your pocket and hand it to me. It's not
prepackaged only. Prepackaged only.
good. Yes.
So we'll see you down in New Orleans, Victor.
Yes.
We're all there a couple days early, so let's get together and have some fun and some coffee. Okay. And thank you for both of you for getting up so early. It's earliest for me and Rob because we got up at 7:45, but we're now in a good space.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Victor. See you soon.
You.